What's going on, everybody? So today I'm going to be doing something a little different because I figured while I'm sitting here waiting for the Academy Award nominations to be announced, and while I'm waiting for other big films to get released this month and next month, like Glass, The Destroyer, and Us, I figured I'd just go ahead and kill some time and talk about some Lars Von Trier films that I got to see recently. Because ever since I saw The House That Jack Built in late November, Lars Von Trier as a director has really intrigued me. And I've really been wanting to go back and watch a lot of his films because for the longest time, I avoided Lars Von Trier because of just the kind of awful word of mouth that I would hear from him. Because for years and years, I thought Lars Von Trier was just this kind of, shocking director just for the sake of being twisted and shocking. Just the way that people would talk about him as a film director, just the way that people would talk about him as a film director really gave me the impression that his films didn't have much artistic merit to them, and he was just this kind of sick guy who just liked to make filthy, shitty stuff. And after watching a lot of his films, that turns out to not be the case, and I'm glad it's not the case, because after I watched The House That Jack Built, that certainly didn't seem to be the case, so I'm really glad that I went down this road and started to check out a lot more of his film, because even if some people just want to dismiss him as just being this pretentious jerk-off, his films, in my opinion, at least some of them, are unlike anything that I've really ever seen. And I've just been really dying to talk about the films that I've seen, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So the first film on the list is Melancholia. Melancholia stars Kristen Dunst, and it honestly has a pretty good cast all around. It has Charlotte Gainsbourg, who is an actress that I've seen appear in multiple Lars Von Trier films thus far, and she's also a great actress, at least in the films that I've seen with her in it. Pretty underrated, but Kiefer Sutherland is also in this film, which I did not expect, and he's not in it for very long, but, he gives a good performance. Basically, everybody in this film gives a great performance, except for this one kid that's in it. His performance doesn't seem to be the most believable, but I do kind of have reasons to why I might just give that a pass, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But the first thing that I'll say about Melancholia is that to me, it seems like Von Trier's most simplistic film that I've seen. And it's also his, less preachiest film as well. And when I say preachy, I'm gonna go ahead and explain what I mean by that, because I've gotten multiple different comments that are asking me what I meant by that. When I say preachy, I mean that the film goes out of its way to explain some sort of thematic notion that it's trying to convey, because it just can't help itself. It just has to explain to you what it's going for when it comes to a certain scene or a certain theme. And with Melancholia, you don't really have moments like that. You might have a few where it kind of borderlines it, but overall, this film is actually, more tame and more subtle compared to his other films. And to me, it's arguably his most visually stunning film as well. Especially the way this film starts out, the first 5 minutes of it, it's a lot of really slow motion shots, which is something that I've noticed that Von Trier loves using. He seems to really like using that super duper slow-mo effect. And for the most part, I think it's really interesting and captivating. But yeah, like I was saying, the first 5 minutes of this film is beautiful. And it really does a good job at establishing the kind of atmosphere that it wants. But after the first 5 minutes, it kind of goes off and just does the whole narrative approach. And it does that for quite some time. And it doesn't really go back to that really slow-moving, visually stunning aspect until way later in the film. But either way, I still think it did a really good job at, like I said, really kind of giving you the atmosphere it was going for. Kirsten Dunst's character is basically the main character of this movie, and her character really serves as the driving force to display more thematic notions about people who are clinically depressed. Because, you have some people who just say, I'm sad and I'm depressed, but then you have Kirsten Dunst's character, who is quite literally clinically depressed. And I thought the film just did a great job at conveying how someone who is clinically depressed looks and acts like. And, more praise goes to Kirsten Dunst as well, because she did a phenomenal job at playing this character. Someone who really just can't enjoy any moment she has, because every moment she has, her brain is just wired to just think the worst of every possible situation, which then consequently results in her character going through with certain decisions that will impact the rest of her life. And again, I really like that because it's true. especially for people who do suffer from depression, it really shows you how it really affects their life and it affects their process of decision making. Charlotte Gainsbourg is also in this film, and she plays the sister to Kristen Dunst's character. And basically, the second half of this film focuses a lot on her character. And again, like, I thought she gives a phenomenal performance in this film. She really knows how to portray a panic attack. Like, she really is great at conveying somebody who is just filled to the brim with anxiety and just suffers from these panic attacks. But I also really enjoyed the sister dynamic between her and Kristen Dunst's character, because not only does it add some more nuance to Charlotte's character, but it really shows you how different minds are perceiving certain situations and how they react to certain situations. Kiefer Sutherland is also in this film, which is something that I didn't see coming. And of course, he gives on a pretty good performance in this film, at least for the time that he's in it. And he kind of plays this really unlikable, arrogant scientist, astronomy expert kind of guy. Kiefer Sutherland also plays Charlotte's husband. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, he plays the husband of Charlotte's character. And they also have a kid in this movie who, you know, again, like I said, is in the middle of all this, but doesn't really give the most convincing performance. But, you know, to kind of give a little bit of leeway to it, you know, the situation and the environment that the kid grows up in kind of shows you that he is sheltered because he just seems to have a comfortable life. So the child perhaps wasn't able to really grasp the gravity of the entire situation, which is maybe why, you know, he didn't really give the kind of performance that one would expect from him. But that is kind of an issue with it, because, you know, everybody in this movie gives a great performance, but when the kid comes on, you realize that someone seems like they're acting. But the third act of this movie, to me, was really anxiety inducing. And not only was it anxiety inducing, but the final shot of this movie is also, like, visually stunning, at least in my opinion. Some people might find it cheesy, but I thought just the way it was done was absolutely stunning and terrifying. And, you know, I think that after watching this film, it seems to have less to say about stuff than all the other Von Trier films that I've seen. At least compared to his other films, it doesn't have much of it, but it's there still, and this film gives you a lot to chew on regardless of that fact. And I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to give Melancholia an 8 out of 10. Alright, so next in line, we got Antichrist. Antichrist, just real quick, was a film that my cousin Eric bought me. Shout out to Eric. He got me Antichrist on Criterion Collection, and I was so damn happy because I've been wanting to see this film for so long. So, I finally saw it over the holidays, and I thought this film was fantastic. And you know, the thing about this film is that this was probably the first Von Trier film that I've ever known to exist. And it's because of how much shit I heard about it, about how just, like, disturbing and fucked up it was. Like, I guarantee you, if you go on YouTube and look up, like, top 10 most twisted, most fucked up movies you'll ever see, Antichrist is somewhere in there. I don't know where it ranks, but it's definitely somewhere in there. But yeah, I really love this film a lot, for a lot of different reasons. But first, let's just talk about the performances. Willem Dafoe just gives one of the most staggering and one of the most convincingly haunting performances I've ever seen from his entire career. Same goes for Charlotte Gainsbourg. Just the amount of dedication that both of these actors put into this film, and honestly, especially Charlotte Gainsbourg, just the shit that she does in this film and the shit that she's willing to put on screen, it's really just mind-blowing that more people haven't really praised her enough as an actress, because this role is extremely demanding. But on top of the phenomenal performances that this film gives you, it's also just visually stunning. Like, I think Melancholia is, like, objectively probably more visually stunning than all of his other films, but if I'm being slightly biased, I think Antichrist takes the cake, just because I really enjoy the shots that have to do with the woods and nature, and this film gives you a lot of that. And which kind of bridges me to another thing that I really loved about this film. One thing that I just noticed basically about every Von Trier film that I've seen is that he really likes to dive deep into nature and humanity. And this film really dives deep into both of those themes, especially nature. And I just thought it was explored very well. It's explored in a really haunting and very uncomfortable way, but nature is kind of haunting and uncomfortable, and I like that the film made that point through its style and use of camera work. And yeah, this film has insane, shocking moments, right? Like everybody who knows about this film, I guarantee you knows because somebody said that it just has crazy, shocking shit in it. And it does. And I was hoping that all of the crazy shit that I see in this film would have some sort of thematic purpose to it. And after watching it, I really do think that it does. Sure, some of it is pretty batshit, but I think that it is there for a reason. Especially when you start piecing together its theme about nature, it seems to make all the more sense about why some of the really shocking shit is in this film. But yeah, I just really love how the theme of nature is explored in this film because it's really brutal, but it's brutally honest. Because people tend to forget just how ruthless and relentless nature is. People always have this idealized concept in their head when they hear the word nature, but nobody really talks about how uncompromising nature is and how nature really don't give a fuck about your life at all. And this film also shows you how nature just kind of has this way at flaunting your personal misfortunes at you, and just the way that was conveyed in this film was just so terrifying, but again, just really thought-provoking and really impressive in my opinion. Like most of the visuals and the way that things are conveyed in this film were really impressive and beautiful. And there's also themes in this film that explores the notion of misogyny. And I can really see, somebody watching this film and walking away with the idea that this film was promoting misogyny. But I think if you just put in maybe a little bit more analytical effort, you'll see that it's probably the opposite. Like, this film does a lot. It really has a really roundabout, subversive way at condemning misogyny. And I thought that was just really interesting and ambitious, despite the fact that some people might walk away, thinking that it is a misogynist piece of art. But in my opinion, it's not. There's plenty of things that you can grab from this movie that shows you that it's not. And the third act of this film gets really intense. Like, it's like gut-wrenchingly intense at times. And that's one thing that I just loved about these Von Trier films, is that most of the time, in the third act of the film, it'll just give you something really just intense, like extremely intense, to where you really just don't even know what the fuck to do. And on top of it just being really like brutally intense, it's also visually stunning on top of it. Like, the way that it uses fog in this film was just, it was such a treat to watch on screen. Like, it just really looks beautiful. But just know ahead of time, before you get into this film, that it is an extremely graphic film. You see a lot of shit in this film. There is no area in this film that is shy about exploring, that's for sure. But if you're already really used to that kind of stuff, it shouldn't be a problem. Or if you just are really willing to test your endurance and your threshold, then go right ahead, because at least this film isn't just being terrifyingly twisted and shocking just to do it. Like, I really do think that there is some sort of artistic purpose behind pretty much all the stuff that's in this film. And also, just a fair warning, this film really expresses and conveys anxiety to a really intense and believable degree. So for those who really do suffer from serious anxiety issues, proceed with caution, because this film does have a segment in it to where it really immerses you into that feeling. And yeah, just be prepared for that shit. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this film. It's visually stunning. It's twisted and fucked up, but it's also, in my opinion, artistically relevant. And the performances all around are just astonishing. So I'm going to give Antichrist a 9 out of 10.
Chaos reigns.
Alright, so the last one we got on the list is Dogville. Where do I even really begin with Dogville? Just right out of the gate, just so you know, Dogville is so close, and it just might be a masterpiece. I'm not gonna lie, when I put this film on and started watching it, once the first 2 minutes occurred, I was like, wow, this is really trying to do something different here. Like, this is really going out of the box and doing a kind of avant-garde approach. and I wasn't really fully buying it at first. Like, I was really skeptical of what I was getting into. And to be honest, for the first, 10 or 15 minutes of this film, I wasn't fully immersed in it. And I was really waiting to be, truly captivated and immersed, and it just wasn't happening yet. Just because of the way that it's presented and its style of presentation. I'm not going to give it away, because I feel like this is best experience going into it not knowing how it's presented to you, because I feel like it'll just give you a more genuine experience. So I'm not going to tell you how it's presented, but just know that it is ballsy. And, a lot of people would probably say that it's lazy and stupid and pretentious. But, after watching the entire film, I found the approach just to be just staggeringly spectacular, if that's even the way to describe it. But it was just really astonishing the way that this film chose to approach its story and its theme. This film really ends up taking you for a wild ride and grabbing you by the balls with a lot of the shit that goes down in this film. Pretty much every character in this film is insanely memorable. And the way that Nicole Kidman interacts with all these characters in this town that she's in, which, by the way, Nicole Kidman, of course, just gives a great performance in this film. But just the way that just all of the human interactions that she goes through throughout this entire town were just so telling. And especially the way that the whole route that it goes down, it just really is so telling about the honest truth of the nature of humanity. And again, one thing that I've noticed about Von Trier films is that he really loves to dive deep into themes regarding humanity that are really uncomfortable and true. A lot of these things regarding humanity that Von Trier likes to dive deep in are really just uncomfortable things that a lot of people really just don't want to talk about. Because, regarding more contemporary moral values, people tend to, push this idea that forgiveness is always the go-to virtue at all costs. If somebody wrongs you, the best possible thing you could do is just forgive them and just move on, right? But this film really holds that position's feet to the fire, because just the way that the road that this film goes down, it really forces you to think about this honestly. And I have heard some people label this film as manipulative, and it is in a slight kind of way, but in my opinion, it's only manipulative to really get you to answer the burning question that it presents honestly. Because if it doesn't present it in this way, people are going to walk away with the same conventional notion they had when they started it. And I just really, really enjoyed the way that this film was presented. I love the way that this was written out and directed, especially when you get to the third act of this film. It really reveals more of Nicole Kidman's character's background. And there's a conversation that she has with somebody in the third act that, again, it is kind of preachy, right? I've used that word, to describe Von Trier films in the past, but it doesn't really stop you from thinking about the film and what it was saying. Sure, it might be giving you a lot verbally, but there's so much that occurs in this film, and there's so many different thematic notions that get conveyed through different kind of contextual situations that even though it is, a little preachy, and it does somewhat at times spoon feed you some sort of thematic meaning, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still very thought-provoking. And again, it just really dives a lot into the human condition and who we are really at the core of who we are as humans, because this film really makes you realize that we are just animals. We really are just these complex animals that are willing to basically take advantage of any situation that we see fit. If there's any situation where a human being realizes that they have some leverage, they will pretty much 100% of the time capitalize on that shit. And I just really love the way how this film was able to convey those honest truths about who we are as a species, because there is a line. People like to pretend like there isn't a line, but there is a damn line. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I think it's an incredibly intelligent film. It's a very ambitious film. All the performances all around were just phenomenal. It's thematically heavy and true about a lot of things about humanity. And I just really, really adored this film. And you know, it's 3 hours long, and I didn't realize it was 3 hours long. I only looked it up after I was done, just out of curiosity to see how long it was. And it's basically 3 hours flat. And this film basically just flew the fuck by, so that was pretty astonishing to me. But yeah, this film is phenomenal. It's a near damn masterpiece. So I'm going to give Dogville a 9.7 out of 10. The only reason why I'm not giving it a perfect 10 out of 10 is because there were a few moments where something thematically heavy and interesting was happening, but the narration in this film, by the way, there is a narrator, I didn't mention that. The narration of this film at times kind of took away from the moment and diluted it because it was just telling you thematically what was happening. And those parts, you know, just kind of bugged me a bit, so I just really couldn't give it that 10 out of 10 score. But overall, like I said, it's a near damn masterpiece. I highly recommend any film lover, any art house film lover to go watch it. I don't think a casual would have much fun watching it. They might. I honestly have no fucking clue at this point. You maybe be able to show this to a casual and they might enjoy it, but they definitely won't love it at first. It's gonna take them a while to really get into this shit. But anyways, that's gonna be a wrap on that. Those were the 3 Von Trier films that I saw during the holidays, so I decided might as well talk about. So I figured I might as well talk about him because apparently there's a lot to talk about when it comes to his film. So, and also, you know, I'm waiting for, you know, other bigger films to come out like Glass and Us. So, and also the Academy Awards. So for those who don't know, if there's any newcomers watching this video right now, I'm also going to be doing a Oscars nomination reaction and thoughts video. And I'm also going to be doing a live stream on the day of the Academy Awards ceremony, where I'll just be hanging out with a few friends and we're going to be reacting and predicting all of the awards. So please stay tuned for that shit because we get fucking passionate, especially when it comes to the Oscars. Even though it's weird because like we know the Oscars is garbage, but we still can't help but just be so upset and passionately angry. But anyways, if you really like what I had to say about these films, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film related content.